Your thoughts on this? I mean, certainly it was an eye-catching announcement on stamp duty.
Well, we said, didn't we, Darren, before I came in, that there was a rabbit in the hat here, and she had a big announcement, and actually it did not leak, and no one knew what it is or was. And she announced, Kemi Badenoch announcing that a Conservative government, should they win power, would abolish stamp duty. Now, that is a £9 billion tax cut that would apply to millions of people, and it really did energise and invigorate the room and invigorate the conference. And I think you took some of the doorsteps I did with the Cabinet after, genuinely a lot of enthusiasm in this moment, in this room, for that policy and that speech. And why? A couple of things, Darren, that we were talking about. Number one, this was a Conservative leader that really needed to come here and try and assert her authority over a party, with endless discussions about whether she is the right person to lead them, given that 11 months into her leadership, Nigel Farage has stolen the megaphone and really stolen the march on the Conservatives. Hundreds of councillors hundreds of council seats move into reform, dozens of councillors defecting, 18 senior Conservatives defecting to reform. So she really needed to try and sort of show that she was up for the fight and that she had a plan and she had an argument to take for the party, but also to the country. And then I think what you saw in that speech was a lot of policy and policy promises, because I think there's been an admission within her team that they were slow out of the blocks in a very fast-paced political environment. As I said, Nigel Farage stealing the initiative on things like immigration policy, and they really need to get a retail offer out to the public, and they need to do it fast. So I think that's what they were trying to do today. I think once the dust settles and the headiness of the speech and the announcement dissipates, there's still fundamental questions, fundamentals about, do the public really trust the Conservatives on the economy? At the moment, it seems like voters are bunching the Conservatives and Labour together as people that are being in power or in power now, and they're not fulfilling promises and they're not delivering the change the country needs. And now they're looking at reform as the change party. So can she convince the public? And I think that really, despite the giddiness in this room, because genuinely it was quite electric when she made that announcement, I think as the dust settles, the Conservatives are now looking forward to the May local elections and elections in Wales and Scotland. And if they go backwards, then there are going to be continuous questions about whether Kemi Badenoch needs to be removed as leader. I don't think those questions will go away, and I think now, between now and then in May, they really need to start to show some improvement in the polls. So I think she's going to have to get out there now and really make the argument. When you're in opposition, it's a battle for attention, because the government has the megaphone every single day, and she's given that megaphone to Nigel Farage. She needs to try to wrest it back.
And Beth, just very briefly, it's interesting you use the word giddy there. That is exactly how the word I use to describe effectively Kemi Badenoch making that announcement. But let's just briefly talk about where this leaves her. I think what is interesting, what I would say is, both for Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, loads of questions going into the conference about leadership, about whether they would survive for much longer. It does feel that in both circumstances, they've managed, at least temporarily, to dampen that down. And I think you've got a sense with that, with her speech today, will have helped Kemi Badenoch retain her position for a little while longer.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dan. I think there's a couple of things. I think for Keir Starmer, what he did in his speech last week, and we talked about it, was that he managed to give the party faithful, if you like, something to fight for. So he set Labour up against reform. He talked about a fork in the road, about what sort of Britain you wanted. And he got massive cheers in the Labour Hall when he talked about some of the racism seen across the country in recent months. And activists really liked what he had to say. And he really did buoy his audience audience. There are still questions about whether he can translate that to the public. The poll out by YouGov today, I know it's only one poll, but Labour on 20%, Reform on 27%, the Conservatives joint third with the Liberal Democrats on 17%. So Keir Starmer, yes, he is doing better after that conference speech, but people are still looking at the May elections as a difficult moment for him. And of course, that November budget, how rocky is it going to get around that? And then Kemi Badenoch, I would say the same thing. What she's given today are activists, Conservative supporters, something to go and argue about, to fight about on the doorstep, a real retail offer that they can say that they can deliver to voters, because they need to try and get voters' attention. The danger for the Conservatives at the moment is just relevance. They just don't feel relevant because you've got Reform now almost like the unofficial opposition. And so she's got some real policies there. And I imagine, Darren, that tomorrow that stamp duty announcement, it might get on the front pages and will get talked about. So I think that she has come through this conference, as Keir Starmer did last week, with lots of questions about her. I think, yeah, maybe she's put some of them at bay because there were discussions about whether or not in November, when she's been leader for a year, MPs can then try and put in votes of letters of no confidence. And if you get above a certain threshold, she could have faced a leadership challenge. Now, will that go away and will the moment of reckoning become May? I don't know, Darren, but I can see an argument why people feel very buoyed today by that speech. She delivered it well. You know, she is a good public speaker and she delivered it well. The room were with her, so she'll be pleased with that. But for both of these leaders, the real problem is that Nigel Farage is doing all of the running, and she might not have name-checked him in that speech. I don't think the Conservatives want to go toe-to-toe with Reform and give them a real roughing up, not least because they want to get those voters back because they're defected, often Conservative voters, so they don't want to pile in on Nigel Farage. But for both leaders, they somehow need to try and win back those voters that are saying none of the above and go into Reform. And I think we've just got to now see this play out. And as I said, for both of them, the May local elections with Wales and Scotland is a massive moment next year. And Keir Starmer, as I said, has a really big problem with that budget in November, when there could be potentially billions more of tax rises from a government that said a year ago, with that massive tax-raising budget, we won't be coming back for more. That was Rachel Reeves' message, and I think that message is going to get blown out of the water, and let's see what the repercussions are for them then.